It's actually Spanish, she's getting a minor together, so. The German's gonna be totally forward to her. Everything else was sitting around her.
Yeah, we had plans, but we're gonna be doing ourselves. Jill and Jackie gonna be here today, you know?
They did tell me that they were not, and I asked them, I think they're not sure.
Yeah, when I saw them both Saturday night, they indicated they were gonna be here, so. Yeah, when I saw Jackie last week, she was gonna be here.
And
Well,
Jill
they're
asked for a
officially late.
package. Jill asked for a package to be here rather than at the office site.
We have a forum.
Well, we might as well get it started. We're gonna come in a little bit late. Good morning. This is our normal monthly board meeting for Here She Comes in right now. And as soon as Jackie's in here, we'll have her lead the pledge of allegiance. Pressure.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have any guests who are scheduled to speak? I don't see any.
I have just one, Stacy Jordan, who's
Oh,
our
Stacy.
Vanderbilt coordinator, and she's going to talk about the first accident, so I'll just refer to her.
Excuse me, Mr. Albert, I don't know your way here. I will need to speak also for the public.
Okay, you'll get an opportunity here in just a moment.
Okay,
Okay, and we have an agenda, the agenda's in the back. You can get an agenda and follow us along, and maybe you already have them.
okay, very good.
Next item, it would be the approval of the agenda.
I'll move we approve the agenda as presented.
So one comment, we had included a closed session on the agenda. At this point, I don't have anything further to update. We don't have a new, we haven't had a negotiation since the 18th of November, so I would of course remove that from this evening.
So then, in that case,
Okay, I would rescind my motion to approve as presented and make a motion to approve the agenda minus the closed session.
okay, the motion has been made. Is there a second? And Mr. Hennel made a motion to approve the agenda as modified, removing closed session regarding collective bargaining, and seconded by Mr. Allen. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. We have an agenda. We'll have a motion to approve the consent agenda
So
regarding the
moved.
minutes. Mr. Hanold, seconded. And, no, we're moving along.
That's okay.
Mr. Hanold made the motion to approve the consent agenda, seconded by Mr. Allen. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None. We're moving on to public comments. Sir, right now you have an opportunity to make public comments. You have 3 minutes, and if you're commenting on things that are already on the agenda, please hold your comments until we get to the agenda item. We may or may not take action or respond to your comment, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Alan Oakland. I am here to represent my disabled wife. She is legally blind. We live on Highway 20, and right off of Highway 20, off of North Dewey Beach Drive. What I propose is I've been proposing for Island Transit to stop at the bus stop at our address that is 2/10 of a mile off of a deviation off of the route of 411. And it would really be very accommodating to my wife since she has no transportation whatsoever. It would be real easy, and it's all legal, to be able to turn in to this road and to pick her up at this bus stop that I built for her. It's completely safe, it's completely legal. What you would do is you would come from Oak Harbor on Highway 20, you would head north on Highway 20, you turn right on Deception Road, you turn left on Dewey Crest Road, you'd proceed forward to Dewey Beach Drive. The bus stop would be on your right, and you would enter the highway accordingly, just right like that. It's 0.2 of a mile turn in and to turn back out onto the highway. To return, you would do it opposite. You would come and you would take a left onto Dewey Beach Drive and go through Crest Road to Deception Road, and then we would continue to Oak Harbor on Highway 20. This would take maybe 45 seconds to pick up my wife. My wife, she had a stroke about 1.5 years ago, and unfortunately it took her sight, and when we bought that house over there, we thought there was transportation, since Island Transit goes right by our house every hour, on the hour. I can sit on my porch and I can watch Island Transit go by every day. My wife, she has some sight, so she can see the bus. So it's almost an insult to her to not be able to get on the bus. However, I have rode Island Transit on flag stops. Your flag stops right now are at Harold's Market and Deception Tours. And I have called Island Transit, and they have been very kind. They pick me up, take me right to March Point, and then I go ahead and take care of my business. And that's where they drop me off also, is right there at Harold's Market. Now, my wife can't make it that far. My wife cannot walk on the highway, she's blind. So only thing I'm asking is a deviation of 0.2 of a mile to stop at my bus stop that I have right on Dewey Beach Drive to pick up my wife, to make her to March Point, and so that she can go take care of her business. She's very independent. She has rode the bus all by herself. She doesn't need any assistance. She doesn't need dial-a-ride. She makes her way by herself with her disability. If you guys would consider that, I would really much appreciate it. And my wife would be, you wouldn't believe how happy she would be. Just for her to have transportation, because right now she does not have any transportation. Skagit Transit had a pilot program that ran 2 days a week for 6 months. They decided that it cost too much money for them to be able to provide that service after December 1st. My wife used it every day that it was available. She used it on Tuesdays and Saturdays. And there was no problems with it, none at all. She made her way. First time she went, she had assistance. After that, she did it on her own.
Mr. Oakland?
Yes, sir.
Could you wrap it up in the next 15 seconds here, because your time is 3 minutes?
Absolutely. If you folks would consider this deviation, I have a map here that says where Dewey Crest Road is and where Dewey Beach Road is. That comes right off of Highway 20, which is 0.2 of a mile.
Thank you. Do you have an exhibit you can leave with us?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And also, could you identify, are you in Skagit County or in Island County?
I am in Skagit County.
Thank you.
I probably should say that, unfortunately. Who would you like me to leave this with?
Please, for the...
Okay. So this would be that would be the route, and that would be the deviation. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Alan, good morning.
Good morning.
Just curious, sir, how did Skagit say it was, in what regard was it too expensive for Skagit? I'm just curious on that.
They said by their calculations that they would have to have, it was per hour, they would have to have 20 riders per hour every day that they provided the service. We only made like 5-6 rides an hour, They turned around and said that it costed them $60,000 to run that per month. Outside of that, they also stated that, that there was a turf issue with Island Transit and Skagit Transit being where we were at. However, when they ended this at their board meeting, I asked for them to overlook this turf war that is existing and for them to allow Island Transit to pick up my wife since it's only at 0.2 of a deviation.
I'm sorry, I thought when you said too expensive, and so they wanted to eliminate that route, is that correctly?
They did eliminate
Oh,
that
I
route.
thought perhaps it was too expensive to go the 0.2 of a mile, so.
Oh, no.
Okay, I understand, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, Gail.
Good morning, Gail Zuckerberg.
Same thing applies, you know what the rules are.
Right, right. There are no rules. Just a side note, when I was young one here and I went into the women's restroom and, I was in there for a little bit, but then somebody knocked on the door and I thought, okay, there's nobody else out there, and I thought, maybe, why don't we turn those 2 bathrooms out there unisex? Is there a reason why they couldn't be, so we don't have to? Just a mention, just a thought. Okay, for the, just to mention a couple things. When I'd like to check and see, what is it when it comes to a, for executive session? Because like Chairman Allenberg, I remember one time a conversation with you wanting to do an executive session for half an hour and legal counsel said no, you can only, well, we'll do it for 15 minutes, you can always extend, but you can't end early, otherwise you gotta sit around and wait. And then at the last meeting on November 28th, executive session was for 45 minutes. And I estimated between 10, 11, 15, depending on if they took a 5-minute break. They were out of here I came out of the restaurant about 3 minutes after 11 o'clock. Door was open, everybody was already in here, they were completed with executive session early without waiting for the public. So I'd like to see what legal counsel, or if you could find out which one is it, please choose one. And then on top of that, that had to do with the adoption of Resolution 18-16, which was the 2017 annual budget, where at the meeting, I requested information about the fact that why was the executive director expenses, moving expenses, still on this budget again. And I was told by the executive director that it was on the original one, but it wasn't on this one, and he said he didn't catch it, but it's not on this one. So I thought, okay, right on. I get home, I go to look up the draft 3 that I saw, just to make sure that I did see that it had been on draft 3 in the first place. But when I bring up the resolution that it, for the adopted 2017 budget, executive director moving expenses is still on there. It's the one that was approved by the board, still on there. How many errors, it's just so many errors, That's.
You've got about 15 seconds to.
All right.
Comments.
Oh, and for service, first thing, Saturday service. That's a biggie right there. Saturday service, and doing what we can to expand service out to some of these areas. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gail.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm going to comment on.
I'll make one comment that she is correct. The comment in the administrative section still referred to executive director's moving expenses. She is incorrect in that there was no money in the budget line for that. The money had been removed from the budget in previous versions. The narrative had not been updated. So thank you for pointing that out, but there is no money in the budget for the executive director's moving expenses.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And also, Matt, you would address the executive session rules. We follow that
Yeah.
pretty carefully.
Well, first, the nuance, that when you're talking collective bargaining, it's actually not an executive session, it's a closed session, so the executive session rules don't apply. I tend to treat them the same, and we did keep the time. I think we were right on time for, I keep the watch pretty close to.
And if we go over the time, or if we anticipate going over the time, we come out and announce to the public. If the public is, well, we still make the announcement whether the public's here or not. And because you can extend the time. And you can come out, as I understand, you can either come out early and go back into session, is that correct?
Well, you can't do any action before the call time for the end of the executive session. In this case, there was no action taken at all anyway, so.
Yeah.
But it was collective bargaining.
But it was collective bargaining, so it's actually a different statute. It's called a closed session as opposed to an executive session.
And both in the closed section, or in the executive session, for sure, we take no action.
Until after the time.
Until after that time, and then.
If there's action.
If there's action, then we take action in the public.
Right.
Okay?
You can't take action in an executive session. That's not going to.
We make no decisions or take no action during the executive session. And I hope that clarifies it for you, okay? Doesn't look like we have any other comments, so we're going to move on to the executive's report.
Well, good morning. Since this is our last meeting before Christmas, I wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's. A couple of items just for updates. Again, since it's only a couple weeks from our last board meeting, one thing you'll notice different in the that was handed out in your financial packets is we do not have the master voucher list. We're early in the month yet, so we have not done our payables for December. What we did include was a list of what we expect to see for checks cut this month, just for transparency. We will, in January 27th, have the master voucher list for December, so you'll see that in January. For service review, just want to point out that we received just under 400 survey responses in addition to the comments from public meetings. We'll begin looking at those changes to our service area, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in the action item. The Washington State Auditor has concluded their audit. The formal outbrief has been scheduled for January 27th as well, and that'll be during the next Island Transit board meeting. During an informal brief last week, the auditor in charge was very pleased with the audit for here at Island Transit. We don't have a draft yet. She will complete that draft report and actually finalize it here by the end of the month. So as soon as they have released that, you will receive it in email directly from the auditors, and we'll make sure you get that. Specifically, she called out Paul for his work on the financial statement, and also for incorporation of GASB 68, which is the incorporation of pension liabilities into the financial statement. Many agencies across the state have had significant challenges with incorporating that and doing it accurately. So she complimented Paul, on the fact that not only was it incorporated, but incorporated well, and she was very pleased with how that was done. So.
Good job, Paul.
Can I comment that's the only positive comment I've heard about any financial individual as far as GASB 68. Most of them have all been a finding.
So we don't have results from the audit yet, so we'll get those. So I'm reluctant to say anything. What she did share with us was that there's certainly some feedback they gave us on administrative nature, but she did not expect any findings or any issues in the management letter. Yet to be determined if they're being the exit brief on the 27th. So. Another one, Saturday we had the Island Transit Christmas party. We did employee recognition there, and that coincident with the end of the year, we have our Employee of the Half for Whidbey Island and Employee of the Year for Camino Island. So we announced both of those Saturday. Those were David McKenzie, our dispatcher over at Camino, and Dee Wells, our Special Services Coordinator here at Whidbey Island. I'd also like to thank Jackie Anderson and Commissioner Jill Johnson. They attended the Island Transit Christmas party, so thanks for your attendance. And it was noted by the employees, and certainly they appreciate the work. So thanks.
It's fun.
That's fun. Especially since we left before the dancing started. I'm sure they really appreciated that.
As far as updates, route match, we're anticipating finishing the route match upgrades this week on the 15th. And then we'll begin expanding our use of the new capabilities to all the operators by the end of the month. Once the operators are employing all these capabilities, we'll release the Route Shot app and the website. And the reason we're holding off on doing that is the system uses what's logged into it to display where the buses are. So to display it now to the public, we'll only show them a few of the operators that are using it, so we want to wait till everybody's on board with that, and that'll happen by the end of the State Road 20 realignment, in particular, our secondary access. Carletti Architects has been finalizing drawings for the secondary access. The reason for the delay was we had been working with the county to make sure that, one, we had the permits in place for the secondary access and also understood what the requirements would be for maintenance of Smith Prairie Road. So in coordination with the county, we've come to the determination that if we can work within the grant that we have from WashDOT to do an overlay of the road, Old Smith Prairie Road up to the Parker Road interchange there where the state had worked, that there wouldn't be a requirement for a long-term maintenance agreement for Island Transit. So that's what Carletti has been working with the civil engineer and with the county on, is finalizing those plans. We hope to have that done here this month. And what that will require is, initially we thought for the secondary access, it was just going to be the paving to Old Smith Prairie Road, which was going to be, for probably $70,000 or less. This, with the overlay, will push it over $100,000. It's still within the, I think we have about a little over $200,000 in the WashDOT grant. So it's still covered by the grant. But in pushing it over $100,000, consistent with our procurement policy, that will require us to develop an RFP for bids in compliance with that. So we'll do that, in January, build the RFP, and then go out ITB. What's that? It'll be a bid, ITB, invitation to bid. Great. Thank you very much. And then we'll do that in, again, probably April at the earliest to, with spring to be able to do that.
How much? What is the difference between the paving and an overlay?
I'm sorry, really talking about the same thing. So the road that's out there, we want to do basically an overlay on top of that to correct the deficiencies in the road today. And that's pavement.
Okay.
And that's it for significant updates. There's a couple of dates in there. I have a meeting with Joe Downs, who's a staffer for Senator Cantwell, next week. That's a new addition to the schedule that I put on there. So pending any questions?
Any questions? Hearing none, apparently there are any. Thank you very much. Finance Director, Finance Manager's report. All
Good
yours.
morning. This is a report for November 2016. First thing I'd like to talk about would be cash in November. The two highlighted areas I'm showing, sales tax and contract revenue. The first one, sales tax, we saw about an 18% increase over what we budgeted for this month, and so that's a really positive thing. We're about 12% ahead of budget if we take into account the remaining month in this year of December as only receiving the budgeted amount, which would be about $1 million more than what we were anticipating for the year. So we've really done well on the sales tax front. And then if we just look at the first 11 months, we're about almost 15% ahead of what we budgeted. And this is pretty typical. We're getting our operating grant revenue, but these are the sources for this month. Then how are we using our cash? We have expenses of $772,000, which is about $100,000 below our monthly average of $875 for 2016. So expenses basically have been low for this month. And our ending cash balance at about $5.7 million is about $500,000 more than it was at the beginning of the month. And it's partly reflecting those two large elements. Keeping expenses low, keeping unexpected tax revenue high, fuel costs being low, and that's our net result. So we're actually coming in close to what we were targeting in our cash flow analysis at the beginning of the year. I think we were talking about 5.8 million as being an ending balance, and right now we're at about 5.7. Once again, that's kind of the way cash is looking. We're taking some of that surplus and putting it into various reserves in order to prepare for purchases of capital items like buses and vans. As you can see there on this chart, I apologize how small it is, but the general cash has decreased a little bit, but you can see that the other reserve balances have been increasing, and the total has increased as well. If we look at it from another perspective, budget actual, we can see that we've underfulfilled our grants to date. Some of the grant items have been delayed, but I'm happy to say that our bus orders, I think, have gone in just in the last week, so that's really positive. We've only spent about 12% of those on our total grants so far, and the buses are a big part of that. And the delay really was because the state grant was not completely written, so we were waiting for the state to put together their grant, their bids, so that we could purchase off of the state grant. And as you can see, just about every other category is either on or ahead of what we were predicting. And I should also say I was happy to see that we got a little bit of interest for the first 2 weeks, or the last 2 weeks of November, where we invested $3.5 million in conservative investments with the county. Our expenses, as I was saying before, are below what we would expect for this time of the year, about 70%, where normally I would guess it'd be around 90% fulfilled. And part of the reasons behind that, primarily our fuel costs are down. You can see I highlighted the blue there at about 60%. And again, capital expenses only at around 25%. Other interesting information, ridership information, down slightly from last month, and down about 10% from the previous year, same month in November. You can just see, anything over 5% I've identified. There were some gains in routes 1710, 411, on Whidbey, and 58, and then there were some losses on 3, 2C on Camino, and 411, that's Camino, 411C. Our fuel costs have decreased slightly since last month, and we're still at a historical low if we compare ourselves to the previous year, about 10% below what we would have experienced in the same month a year ago. The per gallon price is a little bit mixed. In diesel, there was a slight increase, and unleaded, there was a slight decrease in the fuel cost per gallon. So here's a graph again of our fuel cost, total cost for the month, down slightly, about 2.5% from the previous month. And if you were just looking at per gallon cost, we can see that unleaded dipped a little bit, diesel rose a little bit. So it's a little bit of a mixed story with the per gallon cost. And that's the end of that presentation. And I should also say I was kind of pleased that our audit group wrapped up like 2 days early, so it saved us a little bit of money this year. That's a good sign. And that's all I have to say for the month of November. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I got one. Because you got the 411W and the 411C. So you got people get on the bus from Camino and come to Whidbey, or to March's Point anyway, or Mount Vernon. You would think that they have to return. So how is there a 12% increase in people going west and a 13% decrease in people going east?
Well, they're not directly connected first, because the 411W only goes to March's Point. The 411C goes to Skagit Station. So there's folks that are going from Camino to Skagit Station that are using follow-on transportation with Skagit or Everett or other places. So there is a path for them to go to Skagit Station and March's Point to connect back to us, but there's not a one-for-one relationship.
Okay. It just seems like they're swimming back.
That's my view.
And interest is a new revenue stream for us, pretty much.
Yeah, I think we received about $700 in interest, which was 2 weeks of interest at about 0.5%. And that's what our treasurer in the Island County will invest our money in a conservative investment. Right now, that's the rate that we experienced. But it's better than nothing. And next month, I would anticipate it to be double that, because we would get 4 weeks. So we would get about $1,400, $1,500 off of that use of that money.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, move right along then. We'll go to item number 1, the Orion Van Pool pilot discussion with possible action.
So I'll just give a little bit of context. I won't steal too much of Stacy's thunder, but the Washington State Transportation Insurance Pool had a pilot initiative with Orion, who's one of the vendors that provides kind of telematics that plug into vehicles and then some monitoring and coaching to reduce, the interest of reducing accident rates and costs. So with that, I'll let Stacy talk to what we've seen over the last 3 months.
So it was a 90-day program that started with baseline, them achieving baseline information. So we had 10 vehicles that we plugged a telematic device into the OBD port, and we gave them the information of where they started, where they worked, their overnight locations. And they plugged all that into their program so that they could basically keep track of where they were going and let us know if they were going out of bounds. But then they monitored their speed, aggressive driving, hard braking, hard stopping, and that information. And then came back to us. We started that on the 7th of September was when we started plugging in the devices, and they started plugging in that information. We had a baseline meeting that was held on the 28th of October, and that time they presented us with the information that they had received so far as how our vehicles were doing. Speeding was our greatest concern. And you can see the high-speed driving frequency compared to other our peers, which are other companies that are in that program with Orion. 60% of the vehicles traveled in excess of 20 miles per hour over the limit, and there were individual infractions as high as 84 miles over the miles per hour. And then some aggressive driving, which would be hard stops or hard starts. So then they pointed out to us that we also had some significant idling events where possibly people were letting the vehicles run for as much as 40 minutes versus the 5 or 10 that they probably needed to run them. And that we could probably save, or we were wasting over $17 in fuel just with high-speed driving alone. And then they offered us digital mileage logs, which we didn't give them at that time. It was, if we gave them the mileage of the vehicles, they could let us know whether it matched the reports that they were giving us, but we didn't get to that point. So then we moved on to the coaching, and we had a meeting, Julie and I had a meeting with Orion on the 11th, and they gave us some tools to coach the drivers with. So we started out with a letter to them, or an email to them, letting them know what we had observed to that point, how they're speeding, how they were driving. And the way we approached it was not as a reprimand, but more as a, we see that you're doing this and that's good, but you're also doing this, which is not good. And because of the parameters of the program, please slow it down, watch your driving. We could pinpoint certain areas where they were doing their speeding. And so the next, this peer comparison, speeding 10 miles over the speed limit, you can see our baseline performance, and then comparing it to other peers within the program. So the worst would be 102, and this is instances or infractions per 1,000 miles traveled. So we were, with our 10 vehicles, we were at 16. Shooting for 0, of course, would be the best. In that time that we did the coaching, we had another meeting to get the trend results on the 28th of November. And just so I'll mention too that out of the 10 vehicles we had, I only had to coach 5 vehicles. The others were doing, under 5 miles over the speed limit. Of those, excuse me, of those 5, I only had to do a second coaching with 3 of the vehicles. And then now at this point, there's just 1 vehicle that's out there that still isn't quite learned yet. So I can continue a little stricter with them. But our baseline results, as you can see, we were way up here at the top of this chart, and we decreased 75% just with those, with the coaching in those 2 weeks that we did, 2.5 weeks that we did our coaching. So if we continued along that line, they believe that we could reach our best-in-class goal if we decided to continue with the program. And then you can see as far as 70 miles, going over 70 miles would be the next slide. And then the comparison there was not quite as significant as the 10 miles over. We had a 21% improvement there. And then most of the remaining vehicles were doing just between 70 and 75 miles per hour, which is pretty much within an acceptable range. And they did point out too the uniqueness of some of our highways being 70 mile per hour speed limits versus just 50 or 60. So there's probably not much more that you're going to improve on that part of it. The idling was down.
Stacy, can I ask you just
Sure.
while you're on that item? Does the program allow you to compare the exact, do they have the data in there where it goes from 70 to 60 back to 70?
Yes.
They do, so it's GPS,
Yes.
yeah,
Real-
dialed
yeah.
in.
Yes.
And these are some of our connector routes that are included?
No, these are Van pools.
Van
pools.
Got it, that makes a lot more sense. I don't know about
I think it
that.
is big bus going.
I did think it's not fast for that bus. I feel a lot better now, thank you.
The engine idling was down 36%. And so if the drivers continue to improve, we could reduce fuel waste by an additional $12 per vehicle per month. And then at the end, you see the improvement scorecard. So when we began the baseline, you can see our direct costs were about $38.17 per vehicle per day. And our savings were $13.49. And they suggest that if we continued along this line, that we could get that down even more. So then, you can see the improvement summary. Our baseline was 16 for speeding 10 over the limit. Currently it was down to 4, and if we could get it down to 1, we'd be best in class. 70 miles over, baseline was 58, current 46, but again, that's the 70 to 75 miles per hour range that they're doing. The aggressive driving just decreased slightly by 2. So, and that one's a hard one to gauge because it's hard stops and hard starts, and you don't really know why they did that. A deer could have run out in front of them. So that one's a hard one to judge. So then you have the slide that shows you what the costs were if we decided to purchase these and continue with monitoring on this program. The list price for each device is $225, and then there's a monitoring charge of $35 per month. There's several different purchase options. You can purchase the units up front, pay monthly service list price for 1 year, and it would end up being $2,250 for the devices, and then $35 a month, so 12 months would be $4,200 a year. You can, for a discount, you could do it prepay 6 months and get a 2% discount, and I've got the cost worked out there for you. Or you could prepay 12 months and get a 3.5% discount. Again, all for a 1-year term. To get the units for free, we could prepay 3 months of service in advance, but we'd have to sign a 36-month contract with them. It would save us $2,250 for the cost of the device, but then you're paying, you're tied to them for 3 years if you wanted to do it that way. Our thoughts on this was, in the end, well, the return on the investment, it's measurable in the baseline, what we wasted in the beginning versus what we would save in the end. If we continued with the coaching. What's not measurable is what we might save if we had accidents because of their bad driving behavior. It could potentially be a lot, but we haven't had many, so I don't know that, we could say that we're going to save a lot because we haven't had any really to speak of. And then of course, we would have reduced complaints from the public if we could coach them and get them to drive, the way they should. There is value in this, but in the ability to monitor them, the access that we have to their website, the details that we can get from them and coach them to be better drivers, there is value in that. There is savings as far as the wasted fuel and the maintenance on the vehicles if they're not driving them rough, hard stops, fuel idling, that type of thing. And getting drivers to improve their habits reduces our risk overall. But while I believe it's valuable, I don't know that what we would save on this would outweigh the cost of the program right now. There are a lot of other GPS type devices out there that are not quite as costly. And with this program, you don't really have the flexibility to move it around between vehicles, which is kind of more what we would want to be able to do if we had a vehicle that was getting more complaints than another. We might want to plug that device in and monitor them and then coach them. This program doesn't really allow for that. So my recommendation would be to investigate other companies and other devices that allow us a little more flexibility and don't cost quite as much. And then we can use what we've learned from this program and incorporate it with the coaching, but using other devices. So if you have any questions.
So one other comment that I'll just throw on Stacy's comment is that she didn't talk a little bit about workload, which is, we only had 10 vehicles that were monitored. So right now we have 60 van pools that are active. And that, by the way, there's 5 additional van pools that have been added for Nichols Brothers in the last month. So, so that's an increase from 55 to 60. But we only had 10 vehicles that were monitored. And that was a significant workload for Stacy. So to say that we would incorporate this into the fleet and then do that same level of monitoring and coaching is not a workload that she and Julie could manage. So we certainly would not have the ability to do it across the fleet with the same workforce that we have today.
And if you did less than 10 vehicles, it wouldn't be advantageous, but any more than that, and it would be unmanageable at our current workload. So.
Question. I was just curious, did the drivers know they were being monitored?
We did notify them that we were participating in this program and that they were being monitored. Nobody complained. We had one comment that it was a spy van, but
that it was what?
A spy van. But it was more in a joking manner. But nobody, got upset about it.
Yeah. Then my other question was, do you do regular coaching just as a matter of routine or not?
Not generally, because we don't know what they're doing out there.
Yeah.
That's why the devices would be valuable. We do get complaints from the public, and when we get the complaints, we do address them directly with the driver of that vehicle. But a lot of times, it's hard to confirm or, you know, they say they were speeding, the driver will tell you all the time, no, I wasn't speeding. So, you know, you just kind of have to say, well, try and slow it down anyway, you know, watch the rules of the road and what you've learned in Vanpille, the defensive driver training class, because all the drivers go through that, so.
Lance?
Good report, thank you. Just curious, well, I guess the NASCAR driver that was doing 84 would have said that.
But they would have said that too.
Yeah, of course. I'm just curious, this is interesting information. Will this information go out to all the other van pool drivers? I think it should, too. I mean, pardon me. You mentioned we haven't had any accident. Well, God, thank God, but you know, there could be a catastrophic one from some knucklehead out there thinking that, you know, he's going to exceed a reasonable speed limit, et cetera, but I think this is the type of information that would go out to those drivers that would say that Island Transit has liability here. And this special service we want to continue, and we want it to be safe, not only for you, the operator, but certainly the people sitting behind you. I think it would be very valuable to get it out and urge them to please read this and understand why we're concerned. And we do appreciate your service, you know.
Right.
That's it.
And I just want to correct one thing. I didn't mean that we have not had accidents, just that we hadn't had any accidents that were directly related to speeding.
Okay.
Most of them were like rear enders or that type of thing. So.
Yeah, thanks.
Rick, did you have?
Yes, well, the numbers I'm looking at, the only thing that's determined is it could possibly save like $13 in wasted fuel from excessive idling, and I can see that. People should know that they're going to be waiting a long time, turn the engine off. However, you know, is there any insurance savings? Do we get any kind of special credit from WISTIP for participating in this?
No, basically this was WISTIP paying for this service for the pilot for 90 days, not just for Island Transit, but for a number of agencies. So.
Yeah, there were two other agencies involved in the pilot, and it was actually sponsored by Munich Re, which is one of our reinsurers. They offered it through WISTIP to those three agencies, which was us, Intercity Transit, and Community Transit, although I'm not positive that Community went through the whole 90-day coaching. But yeah, so it was a trial offered to several agencies, and some had more vehicles. It was basically 10% of the fleet, so we only did 10 vehicles, whereas Intercity, I think they did quite a few more, maybe 30 or something. So.
The other thing I just want to make a comment that, you know, we need to take into context these GPS, you know, these units probably don't take into context the speed of traffic around people when it's going on. If you go on I-5 and if you're going less than 75 miles an hour, you're a hazard. Okay, you are the accident waiting to happen. That's just the nature of the beast on I-5. So, you know, if somebody's going 5 miles an hour speed limit, even 10, typically I drive I-5 between 80 and 85. Oh. Because that's the going rate. If you travel it through the day, that's what you can do and it's designed to do. Anyway, but the thing of it is you have to take that into context. But if we don't have a significant amount of accidents that we're concerned about, I don't see a return on investment. This is costing 3 times as much to have it in the vehicles as what you're getting in fuel savings in return, and I don't see any benefit to it.
Yeah, I think what we were interested in, and why the reason we're not recommending we pursue this pilot for further implementation is what we're really interested in is you know, a system where we could put it in vehicles and either as they come in for preventive maintenance, you know, rotate it amongst vehicles and just kind of randomly sample our fleet as over time. You know, and that's something I think would be of more value to us because we certainly can't put it in all the fleet without hiring additional labor to monitor and manage that. You know, so this system really doesn't doesn't get us what, you're right, we're not gonna see the cost savings, and if we just put it in 10, those folks will know, and the other 50 will know that they're not in the program. We won't see the gross changes.
And it wasn't just just so you know, the highway driving, some of it was within like the Deception Pass area doing, 15
Yeah.
miles over the speed limit coming through
There's
Deception
a couple,
Pass or through Harbor on
45 to
days.
50 and 35, so.
Yeah,
That's
so,
okay, so.
yeah, a lot of it was that, very little of it actually was on I-5, other than the 5 miles over. But the higher speeds, well, the 84 was, but a lot of the, 15, 16 miles over the speed limit was on city streets. So.
I have a question, if there aren't any other comments or
So I get his license plate number.
He's on record saying that. I say all the time. Well, question for both the executive director and the legal. Do we have a written policy about speed? Can
About
they-
speeding?
Yes.
Well, when they join the program and they volunteer to become a driver, in both the rider agreement that they sign and the driver application, as well as the class that they attend, we do address that and tell them that they have to obey all traffic laws and rules, basically. So we tell them they're not allowed to speed at all within the parameters of the program. We know that they're going to do at least 5 miles over the speed limit, most people do, and we wouldn't necessarily, reprimand them on that. But to do anything more than that is not acceptable within the program, because
We'll talk a little bit
It's a
about
public
what happens
program.
if somebody has a ticket either before entering the program or after the program.
we get a complete driver abstract, and if they have had, and it's a point system based on our WSTIP's best practices. So if they have so many points beforehand, I believe it's 4 points, they are not allowed to drive. They have to wait till 3 years from that infraction. If while they're driving, say they get 2 points, and then there's an extra point if they get it in our vehicle. They're still able to drive, but knowing that if they get another one, then they're out. And then, of course, if they get an infraction or have an accident over a certain dollar amount, $3,500, then they're automatically disqualified. And, of course, DUIs or anything like that, it's 10 years. Speeding in a school zone would disqualify them because it's an automatic 3 or 4 point.
That only apply to those 10 drivers, though? Doesn't apply to the general force?
No, that's not true. Those parameters are for the entire van pool.
It's for the van pool, right, if they are ticketed for that.
Okay.
We can't do anything if they're not ticketed, other than if the person doing 84, if he continued to do 84, we have the discretion to say, you're not driving our vehicles, properly, and we need to remove you as a driver. That's always our option, to remove anybody that we feel is unsafe driving. If they've caused accidents or almost hit a pedestrian or something like that. We did have one gentleman who very recently hit a guardrail because he fell asleep at the wheel, and he will not be driving anymore. So.
Whose insurance pays in an incident of driver error? So I'm assuming that for someone to drive, that we check to see that they have an active license, insurance, and
I don't think insurance is required.
Not insurance, the license is required. They're covered under the WSTIP policy.
So we're providing a vehicle, the maintenance, fuel, and covering all the costs for them.
Sure.
They're buying into the van pool, so.
But even if there's driver error, that is that of the individual, that individual's insurance doesn't have to step up to cover them
No.
and their error?
I don't think there's a requirement for the program for them to have insurance.
No. It
In other words,
isn't.
there's no requirement for you to have a car.
Right.
Sure, I'm tracking a little bit. I mean, I understand conceptually, but it seems like I have insurance even if I drive someone else's car.
WSTIP is their insurance, basically. For them to drive our vehicle, they're covered under our
But they're
insurance.
not paying anything for that insurance.
They are in their fares. They pay monthly fares, and that the cost of the insurance, the vehicle, the maintenance, and fuel is all included in that fare. And we do a review of the fee structure every year to see if all the costs are still being covered. But that insurance is covered in there.
If there's an incident and there's a payout, we have a $5,000 deductible, right? Who pays that deductible? And is that deductible calculated into their individual driving rate?
Well, that,
No.
it's
not.
included with, yeah, no, it's actually, yeah. It's complicated to explain the insurance, the way the insurance works, but of course, we don't have a deductible if somebody hits us. So there is no, we don't pay the $5,000 deductible if somebody hits us. It's just if we cause the damage to our vehicles, then we pay the $5,000. So,
I understand the model, it just feels like there should be more of a consequence for the individual if it was a driver error situation for the accident. Basically, you just can't drive a van pool anymore.
right.
But if anybody up here was driving their own personal car and hit someone, you take responsibility for that deductible, for that full insurance payment, for any increase to the insurance. I mean, in this situation, that driver gets to walk away without any of the financial ramifications of their poor decision-making and driving. I mean, I guess if I'm gonna want my own van pool now, I guess.
So if you can find 4 partners, they go.
Well, forget it, I'm out. I can't. I'm not gonna get 4 people to hang out with me in a car for any amount of time.
You know, part of it too is it's hard to get people to volunteer to drive a vehicle with other people in it. And so, having all of the insurance, while it seems like a perk, it takes a lot if they're driving that vehicle every day, taking the responsibility of that vehicle and those people in it. To get people to volunteer to do that is hard. And you have to have 2 drivers in the vehicle in order to get a van pool. And so if you've got nobody wanting to step up because they've got an extra financial burden, plus they've got the responsibility, plus they're giving up all of their time to do the driving where everybody else is relaxing. You know, I mean, it's kind of, this is the benefit. And some agencies offer personal use of the vehicle, we do not. So it may seem like a perk, but it's kind of a trade-off. So.
Are you finished?
And it doesn't cause any rate increases in our insurance if they have an accident, because that's not the way this bit works, so.
Yeah.
He has a comment.
No, I was just gonna say, so basically when somebody volunteers to be a van pool driver, it's almost like they're an employee, but they're not paid, correct?
Yes.
And so it'd be the same difference as an employee of the county. If I use my vehicle to go on a business trip and I wreck it, I'm paying. If I take a county car and use it to go on a business trip with the county and wreck it, the county would pay. It's the same difference, except this is an unpaid employee. Their benefit, or their pay is having a van pool.
We can move on this, but I have one question for legal since Jill brought this up. You have third-party claims in a vehicle. It's probably fairly easy to define negligence, or aggressive driving would probably be subjective. You know, different reckless driving, negligent driving, things like that can be defined. If third parties are injured, and can they then make a claim against the Island County Island Transit Insurance?
Yes.
But the driver is relieved from any of that exposure?
Basically, in that situation, WISTIP actually steps in and defends the driver.
Okay.
So it's the way that works. That does happen, so.
That is the shield in there then.
Well, with van pools, it's two-pronged, because you have potential claims from the passengers within the van, and then you have potential claims from the universe at large, so.
Yeah. Okay.
And in the history of WISTIP, there's been situations where there's been a singular event where you've had claims inside the van and outside the van.
Okay. Any other comments, questions before we move on?
I think this recommendation is good, that the value in the program is clear, but the looking for the flexibility for an organization our size probably makes